There are three little words that narcissists use like a weapon to completely destroy your sense of reality, and if you hear them consistently from someone in your life, you need to run immediately because you are under psychological attack. I'm talking about the phrase, "You're too sensitive." That's it. Three simple words. Sounds almost harmless, doesn't it? Maybe even sounds like a legitimate observation. But trust me, in the hands of a narcissist, this phrase is a finely honed scalpel designed to gut your self-worth and leave you questioning your own damn mind. It's their favorite weapon, the one they pull out when they want to inflict maximum damage with minimum accountability. Now, why are these words so dangerous? Because they're not just an insult. They are a complete and total invalidation of your emotional experience. Think about it. You have a reaction to something they did. Maybe they lied, maybe they were cruel, maybe they broke a promise. Your feelings are a natural human response to being mistreated. You feel hurt, you feel angry, you feel disrespected. And when you try to express that, what do? They don't address their behavior. Oh no, they turn it all back on you. You're too sensitive. What they're really saying is, your feelings are wrong. Your reaction is the problem, not my action. Your perception of reality is flawed. It's a psychological sleight of hand, and it's devastatingly effective. In my 45 years of practice, I've seen this destroy more people than any other single manipulation tactic. I've sat across from men and women who were shells of their former selves, people who had been so thoroughly convinced that their emotions were invalid that they didn't trust themselves to feel anything anymore. They lived in a constant state of confusion, walking on eggshells, terrified of having another wrong reaction. The immediate effect of hearing this phrase is that you instantly question yourself. 1 second, you feel justified in your anger or your hurt. The next, after those three words hit you, you're thinking, wait, am I overreacting? Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I'm the one who's crazy. And just like that, the narcissist has won. They've successfully shifted the focus from their bad behavior to your supposed character flaw. They've dodged the bullet, and now you're the one left bleeding on the floor, apologizing for getting in the way of their gun. And this isn't just my opinion from decades in the field. The research backs this up time and time again. Studies on emotional invalidation show a direct link to crippling self-doubt, anxiety, depression, and a dangerous dependency on the abuser. When someone becomes the sole arbiter of your reality, telling you when your feelings are acceptable and when they're not, you lose the ability to navigate your own life. You become reliant on them to tell you who you are, and that's a prison I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Have you ever been told you're too sensitive when you were simply having a normal human reaction to being mistreated? Maybe you called your partner out on a lie and they flipped it on you. Maybe you told a parent that their words hurt you and they dismissed your feelings entirely. Drop a comment and tell me what happened, because I want to hear how this affected you. I guarantee you, you are not alone in this. Not by a long shot. When you share your story, you take the power back. You realize this isn't an isolated incident, it's a pattern, it's a textbook manipulation tactic. And that brings me to the bigger picture here. This phrase, "you're too sensitive," is more than just a way to win an argument. It's the gateway to total control. It's the first step in a process of psychological erosion that therapists call gaslighting. They start by making you doubt your feelings. Then they make you doubt your perceptions. And before you know it, they have you doubting your own memories. They can do the most outrageous things and then look you straight in the eye and say, "That never happened. You're imagining things. You're just too sensitive." You ain't prepared for what I'm about to tell you about how this phrase rewires your brain, because it's not just in your head, it has real physiological consequences. It conditions you to suppress your own emotions, to second-guess your instincts, and to accept unacceptable behavior as normal. It's a slow poison that convinces you that you deserve the mistreatment you're getting, because once they get you believing you're too sensitive, they've got you exactly where they want you: silent, confused, and utterly dependent on them for your sense of self-worth. And from that position, they can control every aspect of your life. All right, let's get straight to it. Let me tell you something about the phrase, "you're too sensitive." It ain't just an opinion about your personality. It's a calculated psychological attack designed to make you doubt everything you know about yourself. This isn't a simple disagreement, this is warfare. And the battlefield is your mind. You need to understand the manipulation mechanics here. Emotional invalidation is one of the most powerful control tools in the abuser's playbook. Why? Because it attacks the very foundation of your identity, your ability to trust your own feelings. When a narcissist tells you you're too sensitive, they are deliberately short-circuiting your internal compass. Your emotions are your guidance system. They tell you when you're safe, when you're in danger, when you're being respected, and when you're being violated. By convincing you that your guidance system is broken, the narcissist gets to become your new navigator. And trust me, they will steer you straight off a cliff while telling you what a beautiful view it is. Let's talk a little brain science, because this isn't just psychological mumbo-jumbo. When your emotions are consistently dismissed by someone you love and trust, your brain floods with stress hormones like cortisol. It registers this invalidation as a form of social rejection, which to our primal brain feels like a threat to our very survival. Over time, this chronic stress literally forges new neural pathways. Your brain learns that expressing your authentic feelings leads to pain and rejection. So, what does it do? It starts to suppress them. You begin to automatically censor yourself, creating a vicious cycle of self-doubt that gets deeper with every invalidating comment. They are literally rewiring your brain to work against you. This is what I call the self-doubt spiral. It starts with one simple question: am I being too sensitive? But it doesn't stop there. That question is a cancer. It metastasizes. Soon it becomes, can I trust my own judgment at all? Then it becomes, did that even happen the way I remember it? And finally, it lands on the most dangerous question of all, am I crazy? Once you start asking yourself if you're crazy, the narcissist has you in a psychological checkmate. You've been isolated from your greatest ally, your own intuition. And don't think for a second that narcissists invented this. This tactic is as old as time. Abusers, cult leaders, tyrannical dictators, they have all used emotional invalidation to control their victims. Why? Because it works. It's the most effective way to break someone down without leaving a visible scar. You isolate them from their friends, from their family, and most importantly, from themselves. I had this patient, a wonderful, bright woman whose husband was having multiple affairs. Every time she would find evidence, a text message, a credit card bill, lipstick on his collar, and confront him, his response was always the same. He wouldn't deny it. He wouldn't apologize. He would look at her with this cold, dismissive stare and say, "You are just too sensitive. You're so insecure. You're always looking for something to be wrong." He said it with such conviction that over the years she started to believe him. She came to me thinking she was the problem, that her paranoia was ruining her marriage, not his infidelity. He had used those 3 words to build a fortress around his deceit, and he made her the prisoner. This is the very essence of gaslighting, a term you hear a lot these days, and for good reason. Dr. Robin Stern, a leading expert in this area, describes gaslighting as a process where you start to doubt your own reality. And you're too sensitive is often the first, most insidious step in that process. It's the seed from which the entire poisonous tree of gaslighting grows. First, it's you're too sensitive, which leads directly to that never happened, which then morphs into you're remembering it all wrong and finally culminates in you're crazy. It's a systematic dismantling of your sanity. And here's the cruelest part of all: narcissists specifically target empathetic people. They weaponize your empathy against you. A person with a deep capacity for empathy and self-reflection is the perfect victim. When you tell an empathetic person they're being too sensitive, what do? They reflect, they look inward. They think, well, maybe I am. Let me examine my own behavior. A narcissist, on the other hand, has zero capacity for that kind of self-reflection. They see your sensitivity not as a strength, but as a weakness, a button they can push anytime they need to control you or escape accountability. This all serves one ultimate purpose: to create dependency. When you no longer trust your own version of reality, who do you turn to? The abuser. They become the one who defines the world for you. They tell you what's real and what's not, what's a big deal and what's not, who you are and who you aren't. You become completely reliant on their version of events, and that is the ultimate form of control. The long-term damage of this kind of chronic emotional invalidation is profound. We're talking about severe anxiety, deep-seated depression, and even PTSD. Your self-esteem is obliterated. You lose the ability to make decisions because you don't trust your own judgment. You feel a constant, gnawing sense of guilt and shame for simply having feelings. The warning signs are there if you know what to look for. You find yourself constantly apologizing. You feel emotionally exhausted all the time, and you live in a fog of confusion, always second-guessing yourself. Now that you understand how this weapon works, how it hijacks your brain and destroys your reality, we need to talk about the master manipulators who wield it. In the next chapter, I'm going to tell you exactly who uses this phrase and why it is the narcissist's absolute favorite tool of destruction. You want to know why narcissists love to tell you you're too sensitive? I'll tell you why. Because it's the perfect crime. It's a psychological hit and run. They get to hurt you, and then they get to stand over your emotionally bleeding body and make you feel guilty for being hurt. They get to be the aggressor and the victim all at the same time, and that, my friend, is the narcissist's dream scenario. You have to understand the narcissist's dilemma. These are people who are pathologically driven by a need for control. They need to control the narrative. They need to control your perception of them, and they absolutely need to control you. But here's the catch. They also have a desperate need to be admired. They can't be seen as the bully, the abuser, or the bad guy. So how do they control you without looking controlling? They find ways to make you control yourself. And there is no better tool for that than making you believe your feelings are the problem. This phrase, "you're too sensitive," is the ultimate deflection. It's a magic trick. They do something wrong, they lie, they cheat, they belittle you, and you call them on it. In a healthy interaction, they would have to take accountability for their actions. But the narcissist pulls out their magic wand, waves it, and says the magic words, "You're too sensitive." And poof! Suddenly the conversation is no longer about their behavior. It's about your reaction. They have masterfully shifted the blame from what they did to who you are. It's genius in its cruelty. You're left defending your right to feelings while they walk away scot-free, probably whistling a tune. This leads to what I call the empathy paradox. Who do narcissists target? They target kind, compassionate, empathetic people. They are drawn to your warmth and your capacity for love like a moth to a flame. But the moment you express that sensitivity, the very trait that attracted them, they punish you for it. They need your empathy to feed their ego, but they cannot tolerate your emotions when those emotions hold up a mirror to their own bad behavior. So they feast on your sensitivity 1 minute and then condemn you for it the next. It's a twisted, unwinnable game designed to keep you in a constant state of confusion. I've treated countless couples where this phrase was the toxic centerpiece of their relationship. I'm talking dozens of times per session. The wife would say, "It hurt my feelings when you didn't come home last night," and the husband would immediately fire back, "Oh, here we go. You're just too sensitive. I was out with my friends. Can't I have any freedom?" He never addressed the broken promise or the worry he caused. He just attacked her emotional response, labeling it as a flaw. He trained her to believe that her need for respect and consideration was actually a sign of weakness. And the research community is crystal clear on this. Experts like Dr. Ramani Durvazula, who has done groundbreaking work in this area, have identified emotional invalidation as a primary control tactic for narcissists. It's not just something they do when they're angry. It's a core part of their relational strategy. They use it to maintain dominance and to ensure they are never, ever held accountable. Now, let's talk about projection, because this is huge. a narcissist will call you too sensitive because they are, in fact, the most emotionally fragile people on the planet. They have a paper-thin ego and absolutely zero ability to handle their own difficult emotions like shame or guilt. So, when their actions cause a negative emotional reaction in you, it triggers their own unbearable feelings of inadequacy. They can't tolerate that, so they project it all onto you. They're essentially saying, I can't handle the shame of what I just did, so I'm going to make you the emotional one. I'm going to make you the problem. And look at the power dynamics. The moment someone says, you're too sensitive, they have placed themselves in a position of superiority. They are the calm, rational, logical one, and you are the hysterical, out of control, emotional one. It immediately establishes a hierarchy where they are the judge, and you are the one being judged. It's an instant power grab, and it's incredibly effective at shutting you down. They also use this as a testing phase, especially early in a relationship. They'll do something a little out of line, a little disrespectful, and wait to see how you react. If you speak up and they hit you with, you're being too sensitive, and you back down, you've just taught them exactly how to handle you. You've shown them that your boundaries are negotiable and that you're willing to doubt yourself. It's a litmus test to see if you are a suitable target for their long-term manipulation. I've talked before about my father, who I believe was a covert narcissist. He was a master of this. I could achieve something, graduate with honors, get a scholarship, and instead of a simple, I'm proud of you, he'd find a way to undercut it. If I ever expressed disappointment about it, the response was swift, you're just too sensitive. You always need everyone to be patting you on the back. It wasn't about me, it was about his inability to share the spotlight. He used that phrase to manage his own envy and to make me feel like my desire for a father's approval was a character flaw. And make no mistake, all types of narcissists use this weapon. The overt, grandiose narcissist will say it with a smug, condescending sneer. The covert, victim-playing narcissist will say it with a sigh as if your feelings are a terrible burden they are forced to endure. And the malignant, dangerous narcissist will say it with a cold, dead-eyed stare that tells you your feelings are not only wrong but also irrelevant. The delivery changes, but the poison is the same. Ultimately, the most dangerous outcome of this tactic is the isolation effect. When you are repeatedly told that your feelings are wrong, you stop trusting them. And when you stop trusting your own feelings, you stop sharing them with others. You think, what's the point? They'll just think I'm being too sensitive to. So you pull away from your friends, from your family, from the very people who could give you a reality check and say, no, you're not crazy. What they did was wrong. The narcissist uses this phrase to cut you off from your support system, leaving you alone and adrift in their distorted reality. But here's what they don't want you to know. There are specific situations where this phrase becomes most dangerous. Specific moments when they choose to deploy this weapon for maximum impact. And once you can see the setup, you can start to build your defense. All right, let's dig deeper into this, because if you think narcissists just randomly tell you you're too sensitive, you're dead wrong. This ain't random. This is strategic. They are emotional snipers, and they strategically deploy this phrase in specific situations to maximize the damage and deepen their control. They don't just pull the trigger, they wait for the perfect shot. So, when do they pull out this favorite weapon of theirs? Let's break down the setup scenarios. First and foremost, they hit you with it right after you try to set a boundary. A boundary is your personal property line. It's you saying, this is where my yard begins and you are not welcome to dump your trash here. You finally get the courage to say, no, I can't lend you more money. No, you can't speak to me that way. No, I'm not dropping everything to cater to your whim. A healthy person would respect that. A narcissist sees it as an act of war. Their response, to attack your right to have that boundary in the first place. Wow, I can't believe you're being so selfish. You're just too sensitive about this stuff. See what they did? They turned your act of self-preservation into a character flaw. The second and most common scenario is to deflect from their own bad behavior. This is their go-to move. They show up an hour late. They forget your birthday. They flirt outrageously with someone else right in front of you. When you get that knot in your stomach and say, "Hey, that wasn't okay," they immediately launch the counterattack.
"I was just joking."
"God, you're too sensitive. You can't take a joke." They use it as a smokescreen to escape any and all accountability. It's not about their action, it's about your overreaction. They get to be the fun-loving, carefree one, while you're painted as the uptight killjoy. They also weaponize it during any conflict to shut you down completely. An argument with a narcissist isn't a discussion, it's a battle for dominance. They don't listen to understand, they listen for ammunition. The moment you start making a valid point, the moment you have them backed into a logical corner, they pull the emergency brake. You're getting hysterical. You're just too sensitive to talk about this rationally. It's the ultimate conversation killer. It derails the entire argument and puts you on the defensive, trying to prove your own sanity while they slip out the back door. And God forbid you express a need, a basic fundamental human need. I need to feel like a priority to you. I need you to be honest with me. I need to feel safe in this relationship. To a narcissist, your needs are an inconvenience and a threat to their control, so they make you feel guilty and ashamed for even having them. You're so needy. Why are you so sensitive? I do so much for you and it's never enough? They train you to believe that having needs makes you a burden, so you learn to stop asking. You learn to starve yourself emotionally to keep the peace. They especially love to use this in social situations. This is where they can humiliate and control you with an audience. They'll make a cutting joke at your expense at a dinner party. If you visibly flinch or look hurt, they'll lean in and whisper, "Relax. Everyone's having a good time. Don't be so sensitive." Or worse, they'll say it out loud, "Looks like I hurt someone's feelings."
"She's a little sensitive, folks."
This serves two purposes. It puts you back in your place, and it recruits the people around you into their narrative. I remember this one couple I worked with. The wife, Sarah, was a kind, gentle soul. Her husband, Mark, was a classic covert narcissist. Every time she would ask for simple respect, "Please don't make plans for us without asking me first," he would sigh dramatically and say, "Sarah, you know I'm just trying to be spontaneous. You're so sensitive about control." He did it so often and so convincingly that she started to believe it. She thought her desire for basic consideration was a deep-seated control issue. He had her questioning her own motives for wanting to be treated like a partner. You have to understand the timing strategy. Narcissists are predators, and predators know to attack when their prey is vulnerable. They will wait until you are sick or exhausted or have just had a terrible day at work. They will wear you down with constant criticism and chaos, a process of emotional exhaustion. And then, when you're at your weakest and most emotionally fragile, that's when they deploy the phrase. It hits with 10 times the force because you don't have the strength to fight back. And they are masters of witness manipulation. They will get your friends, sometimes even your family, to agree with them. They'll tell a story where you're the villain, where you flew off the handle for no reason, and they'll cap it with, "You know how sensitive she can be." By the time you talk to that friend, the narrative is already set. The friend might even say to you, "Hey, maybe you should cut him some slack. You know you can be a little sensitive." The narcissist has successfully poisoned the well and isolated you from your support system. So what happens in the immediate aftermath? What's your typical response? If you're like most people, you apologize. You actually apologize for having feelings. You say, "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm just tired. I overreacted." You back down, you retreat, and you absorb the blame because it's less painful than being seen as too sensitive. Every time you do this, you reinforce their power and chip away at your own self-worth. This is why pattern recognition is your shield and your sword. You have to stop looking at these as isolated incidents and start seeing them as a calculated pattern of behavior. Is it happening every time you set a boundary? Is it their go-to response after they mess up? Is it how they shut down every argument? Once you can see the pattern, once you can predict the move before they even make it, You've taken the first step out of the fog. And once you see the pattern, you need to understand what's really happening to your mind on a much deeper level. All right, let's get down to the brass tacks. Here's what 45 years in psychology has taught me. When someone consistently tells you you're too sensitive, they're not just hurting your feelings, they're literally changing how your brain processes reality. This is not just about emotional pain. This is about neurological damage. They are performing a slow, insidious form of brain surgery on you without a license, and the scalpel they use is those three little words. You've heard of neuroplasticity, right? It's the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. It's how we learn, how we adapt. Well, that street runs both ways. Just as you can learn a new language or a new skill, your brain can also learn trauma. When you are subjected to repeated emotional invalidation, your brain starts to build a superhighway for that experience, the pathway that connects "I have a feeling" to "my feeling is wrong and dangerous" becomes paved, lit, and 4 lanes wide. Meanwhile, the healthy pathway that connects "I have a feeling" to "my feeling is valid and I should trust it" becomes an overgrown dirt road. This isn't a metaphor, it's biology. They are rewiring you to distrust yourself at a cellular level. This leads directly to what I call the self-censorship effect. You become your own prison guard. You start filtering every single emotion before it even has a chance to form. You feel a flash of anger, and an internal alarm goes off.
Warning! Too sensitive, suppress immediately! You feel a pang of sadness, danger! You're being dramatic! Shut it down!
You learn to live with a gag order on your own heart because you've been conditioned to believe that your authentic feelings will lead to punishment, ridicule, or abandonment. And that's when hypervigilance kicks in. Hypervigilance is the state of being constantly on high alert, scanning your environment for threats. For the victim of emotional invalidation, the threat is everywhere. You're not just listening to what the narcissist says, you're analyzing their tone, their body language, the slight twitch of their eye. You're constantly monitoring your own reactions, asking yourself, is this a sensitive response? How will they perceive this? How can I react in a way that won't set them off? It is exhausting. It's like running a marathon every single day, and the finish line is just another night of walking on eggshells. And the research on emotional suppression is terrifying. Study after study shows that bottling up your emotions has devastating physical and mental health impacts. We're talking about chronic stress, which leads to high blood pressure, a compromised immune system, digestive issues, you name it. Mentally, it's a direct pipeline to anxiety disorders and deep clinical depression. You're not just hurting your feelings, you're hurting your body. I've seen patients who couldn't trust their own emotions anymore. I mean, literally, they could not identify what they were feeling. I'd ask a simple question like, how did that make you feel? And they would just stare at me with blank, terrified eyes. They'd say, I don't know, I'm not sure. I think I'm supposed to be angry, but maybe I'm just being too sensitive. The narcissist had so thoroughly scrambled their internal GPS that they were completely lost at sea with no compass to guide them. And this is how their voice becomes your inner critic. The abuser doesn't have to be in the room anymore for the abuse to continue. You do it to yourself. Their condescending tone becomes the way you talk to yourself. Their invalidating words become your own internal monologue. You'll accomplish something great at work, and that voice in your head will whisper, don't get too excited. It's not that big of a deal. You're just being sensitive. You have internalized your abuser. This, of course, absolutely demolishes your ability to form healthy future relationships. How can you trust someone else to validate your feelings when you don't even trust them yourself? You become suspicious of kindness. When a new, healthy partner says, your feelings are valid and I'm sorry I hurt you, it can feel foreign and uncomfortable. You're so used to the fight, so used to having to defend your reality, that genuine validation can feel like a trap. This leads to a crippling decision-making paralysis. Your gut feeling, your intuition, is one of the most powerful tools you have. But after years of being told your gut is wrong, you can't trust it. Simple choices become agonizing. Should I take this job? Should I move to this city? Should I end this friendship? You're paralyzed because the one person you need to consult, yourself, has been deemed an unreliable witness. And let's not forget the physical symptoms. The body keeps the score. This kind of chronic emotional stress manifests physically. We're talking tension, headaches, stomach ulcers, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. Your body is screaming what your voice has been trained not to say. Perhaps the most confusing part of this whole toxic mess is trauma bonding. You find yourself fiercely attached to the very person who is destroying you. Why? Because of the cycle. They invalidate you, they hurt you, they push you to the brink, and then just when you're about to break, they give you a crumb of affection, a moment of kindness. And that crumb feels like a feast. Your brain, starved for validation, latches onto that moment and confuses that feeling of relief with love. It's a powerful, addictive cycle that makes leaving feel almost impossible. The challenges to recovery are immense because you're not just healing from a broken heart, you're healing from a broken sense of reality. You have to unlearn years of toxic conditioning. You have to fire your internal critic and reclaim your own voice. It is hard, painstaking work, but here's the good news, and you need to hear this. Neuroplasticity works both ways. Just as your brain was wired for trauma, it can be rewired for healing. You can build new neural pathways. You can learn to trust yourself again. You can turn that overgrown dirt path of self-trust into a superhighway. It takes work, it takes support, but it is absolutely possible. And once you know what to listen for, you can protect yourself and start laying the foundation for that new road. All right, let's roll up our sleeves because knowledge is useless without a plan. If you're hearing you're too sensitive from someone in your life, if anything we've talked about so far is ringing a bell, then you listen to me and you listen good. I'm going to give you a battle plan. This is your strategy to protect your sanity, reclaim your reality, and possibly save your life. First, you need to recognize the early warning signals. The full-blown "you're too sensitive" campaign doesn't usually start on the first date. Narcissists are smarter than that. They groom you. So what are the red flags? It starts with subtle things, little put-downs disguised as jokes. They'll tease you about something you're insecure about, and if you react, they'll say, "Hey, I'm just kidding. Can't you take a joke?" That's the junior version of "you're too sensitive." Pay attention to how they talk about their exes. Are they all crazy and overly emotional? That's a huge red flag. They're telling you exactly how they'll talk about you one day. Next, you need to apply the frequency test. Look, can a decent person in a moment of frustration say something dumb like, "I think you're being a little sensitive"? Maybe once. But here's my rule: once is an incident. Twice is a coincidence. 3 times is enemy action. If this phrase is a regular part of your conversational diet, if it's their go-to response anytime you have a negative emotion, then you are not in a healthy relationship. You are in a toxic, manipulative dynamic, period. And context matters. You have to learn to distinguish between legitimate feedback and outright manipulation. Legitimate feedback, which is rare, feels different. It's specific, it's delivered with empathy, and it's about a behavior, not your entire personality. It sounds like, "Hey, I felt hurt when you brought that up in front of our friends. Could we talk about it in private next time?" Manipulation sounds like, "You're too sensitive." It's a blanket statement designed to shut you down, not to solve a problem. One is a bridge, the other is a wall. Now, here's your most powerful tool for fighting back against the gaslighting, the documentation strategy. I want you to get a journal, a private notes app on your phone, something they cannot access. And you are going to become a court reporter for your own life. Every time they use that phrase or a variation of it, you write it down. You write down the date, the time, what they did that prompted your reaction, and exactly what they said. I worked with this woman who was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Her partner had convinced her she was losing her mind. I gave her this exact advice. For 1 month, she documented everything. When she came back and read it to me, she started crying. Not because she was sad, but because she was relieved. She said, "I'm not crazy. He is," seeing it all written down, seeing the pattern, it's undeniable. This isn't about gathering evidence for a court of law. It's about gathering evidence for the court of your own mind so you can find yourself innocent of the crime of being too sensitive. Once you're grounded in your reality, you need to have your boundary responses ready. You have to have a script in your head for when they pull this move. It needs to be calm, firm, and non-negotiable. When they say, "You're too sensitive," you do not argue about whether you are sensitive or not. That's their trap. Instead, you say one of these things, "My feelings are my feelings. They aren't up for debate." When you say that, you're dismissing me. I'm not going to continue a conversation where I'm being dismissed. We're not talking about my sensitivity. We're talking about your behavior. And then you do the most important thing. You disengage, you walk away. You end the phone call. You show them that that specific phrase is a button that no longer works. You cannot do this alone. You need a support system. You need to find at least one or two trusted people, a friend, a sibling, a family member who is not under the narcissist's spell, and get a reality check. You tell them what happened and you ask them a simple question. Am I overreacting? Let them be your anchor to reality when the narcissist is trying to pull you out to sea. If your entire circle of friends is also their circle of friends, you need to find new friends. And sometimes that's not enough. If you are deep in this fog, you need professional help. A good therapist who understands narcissistic abuse is not a luxury, it's a necessity. They can give you the tools and validation you need to get strong again. Now we have to talk about safety planning, because emotional abuse often escalates. The person who calls you too sensitive today could be the person who throws a plate at your head tomorrow. If there is any hint of physical intimidation, you need a safety plan. This means having a bag packed, knowing where you will go, having emergency money stashed away, and telling a trusted friend about the situation. Your physical safety is non-negotiable. In some cases, you might consider technology protection. And let me be clear, you need to check your local laws on this, because I am not a lawyer. But in some places, it is legal to record a conversation that you are a part of. Sometimes, having a recording of the way they speak to you can be the final piece of evidence. You need to convince yourself that you are not the problem. And all of this leads to the final step, your exit strategy. You ain't going to change these people. You can't fix them, you can't love them into being better, and you can't therapy them into having empathy. Your only winning move is not to play. You need to start quietly planning your exit. This means getting your finances in order, securing your important documents, and emotionally detaching. You have to start seeing the relationship for what it is, a prison. And you have to start planning your escape. Because here's what I want you to understand. You deserve so much better. You deserve a love that feels safe. You deserve a partner who sees your sensitivity not as a flaw, but as a superpower. All right, now listen to me. Let me tell you something that's going to change your life, and I want this to sink in deep. Your sensitivity isn't a weakness, it's your superpower. And anyone who ever told you otherwise was trying to control you. They wanted to dim your light so they could feel brighter. They wanted to break your compass so they could lead you astray. Today, we're taking your power back. We're talking about life after the storm, about reclaiming your emotional reality after narcissistic invalidation. First things first, we have to redefine sensitivity. For years, you've been taught that being sensitive is a flaw. That's a lie. Let me tell you what sensitivity really is. It's emotional intelligence. It's the ability to perceive subtle cues, to feel empathy, to connect deeply with others, and to experience the world in high definition. Narcissists don't have this. Their world is a flat, gray, two-dimensional cartoon. Your world is a vibrant, full-color symphony. They called you too sensitive because they were deaf to the music. Your sensitivity is not a liability, it is your greatest strength. Now, you've got to do the hard work of healing your inner critic. We talked about how their voice becomes your voice. Well, it's time for an eviction. You have to consciously replace their toxic, critical voice with your own authentic, compassionate one. When you hear that old tape playing in your head, you're overreacting, you're being dramatic. I want you to stop and say, out loud if you have to. No, my feelings are valid. I am allowed to feel this way. You have to become your own staunchest defender, your own best friend. This is how you start trusting yourself again. Rebuilding confidence in your emotional responses is like strengthening a muscle that has atrophied. You have to start small. Pay attention to your gut feelings about little things. What does your intuition tell you about a movie, a song, a person you just met? Start honoring those small feelings without judgment. When you feel a wave of emotion, don't push it away. Get curious about it. Ask it, what are you here to tell me? Your emotions are messengers, and for the first time in a long time, you're going to open the mail. And as you get stronger, you'll start to understand what a healthy relationship actually looks and feels like. Healthy relationships are built on a foundation of emotional validation. It's not about always agreeing, it's about always respecting. It sounds like, I understand why you feel that way. It sounds like, tell me more about what's going on with you. It sounds like, I'm sorry I hurt you. In a real, loving partnership, your feelings are not a problem to be solved. They are a part of you to be cherished. And once you've tasted that, you have to set new standards for your life. You have to make a solemn vow to yourself that you will never again accept emotional invalidation from anyone, not a partner, not a friend, not a family member. Your new standard is mutual respect, period. The science is on your side here. Research on emotional intelligence by people like Daniel Goleman has proven that sensitivity, the ability to understand and manage your own emotions and perceive the emotions of others, is one of the single greatest predictors of success in life and leadership. The very thing the narcissist tried to frame as your biggest weakness is actually the key to your greatest potential. I've seen this transformation with my own eyes. I've seen patients who walked into my office apologizing for their very existence, who, after doing this work, stood up straight, looked me in the eye, and spoke their truth without apology. I've seen them leave toxic jobs, start their own businesses, and find love that nourished them instead of draining them. They stopped apologizing for their feelings and started leveraging them as the superpower they are. You need to find your people. Seek out support resources and communities that celebrate sensitivity. There are groups, both online and in person, for highly sensitive people, for survivors of narcissistic abuse. Surround yourself with people who get it, people who speak your language. That's where you'll find the validation and strength to keep going. And as you move forward, you have to become a savvy screener of future relationships. You now know the red flags to watch for early on. How do they handle conflict? How do they talk about their exes? Do they make those little jokes at your expense? You are no longer a naive participant. You are a wise observer, protecting your hard-won peace. Eventually, you'll reach a point where you can use your experience to help others. You can become a beacon for fellow survivors, the person who can look them in the eye and say, I see you. I believe you. You are not crazy. Your story of survival becomes a roadmap for someone else's escape. And that is a powerful healing thing. This emotional intelligence will also enhance your professional growth. You'll be a better leader, a better colleague, a better creator, because you understand people on a level that others simply can't. Now, let me give you a final warning. Remember, you ain't going to change these people. This journey is not about getting them to see the light. They live in the dark and they like it there. This is about changing how you respond to them and ultimately removing them from your life. So let me have your comments. Let me have your questions. Tell me about your experiences with emotional invalidation and your journey to reclaim your reality. I'm doing this because I really want to have an impact on all of you and all of your lives. You deserve relationships where your feelings are respected, not weaponized against you. You deserve to feel safe in your own skin. In our next episode, we're going to talk about how to rebuild your self-worth from the ground up after narcissistic abuse. Until then, have a good week, and I appreciate you spending this time with me. And remember, if someone consistently tells you you're too sensitive, that tells you everything you need to know about them, not you.